Hello, everyone. This is Daniel Roth here for the English 225 Remix podcast. Today we will be debating the merits of the Electoral College. I'm here with my friend Bill Haddad. He is a senior studying economics in the College of Literature, Science, and the Arts. Say hello, Bill.
Hello, everyone.
The Electoral College is a system in which we elect our president, in which every state is given a certain number of electoral votes based on population, and for 48 states in the District of Columbia, whoever wins a plurality of those votes becomes the person who gets all of the electoral votes for that state.
So I am not a fan of the Electoral College, and Bill is a fan of it. And Bill, just give me a quick overview of why you are for the Electoral College.
So, for a couple reasons. I think the overall picture is that by and large, the Electoral College protects the interests of people in smaller states that may have less, power in Congress. It also forces politicians to appeal to a wide range of constituencies. This is mainly true in national elections. I think that it prevents the, tyranny of a few very large states, because a politician will not be able to win solely by pandering to people in California, in New York. And I think it overall is a far more equitable way of electing our president.
Interesting. Okay. Very valid points. I myself am against the Electoral College. First of all, I think historically it is rooted in racist American interests. But I just think when you're analyzing it as a pure mechanism nowadays of electing the president, I understand the importance of representing the minority and protecting the minority voice. It's an important part of democracy. However, I think it's just unfair and unnecessary that the minority can decide the winner of the Electoral College like it has done several times in the past. I think it's been 5 times now, including the 2016 election, where the winner of the national popular vote has not actually won the presidency. Overall, I just think that it provides these really unfair mechanisms, such as swing states that really do not represent the greater interests of the American people. I think it just represents a way that political parties refuse to adapt to a changing nation. And overall, I just think that the demographics of America should be reflected in how we vote a president. I know it's not part of direct democracy, but I think the Electoral College takes that too far. So, Bill, my first question for you is, what do you say when people say that the idea of swing states is unfair in electing a president? So do you think it's fair that 7 or so states are the only ones presidential candidates have to pay attention to?
Yes, and this kind of goes into something you said about representing a wider range of demographics, is what I said in my initial argument. There are states, that California, New York, a lot of states on the East Coast and West Coast, that are always going to vote blue. And there are states in the South that are always going to vote red. That's just because of the political, cultural, and economic nature of those states. And because of that, I don't think it's unfair that these 7 states who might have less homogenous demographics than the larger states that are always going to vote one way, these states are going to have more of a say. And again, it is, like I said, this forces politicians to appeal to the majority of people in those states. Okay, I grew up in Michigan, a swing state. Michigan is always, changing. It's not like it's been red for this many decades, it's been blue for this many decades. And I think because of that, politicians need to try to represent the best interests of the people in Michigan if they want to win a national election.
See, that's interesting, because I don't think that swing states represent the wider cross-section of America. I think that it's important that the electoral vote is different than the national popular vote. Obviously, I like how the smaller states and the people with the less common representation, the more rural people who aren't really becoming as urbanized as the rest of the country, I think that it's good that those differences are reflected in a much different electoral vote than the popular vote. I just think, and I ask you this question, do you think it's a problem when the Electoral College picks someone who is not picked by the majority of Americans. Do you think that's fundamentally flawed in the way that we run our democracy?
No, I think so. One, this country was founded on the premise of protecting the minority from mob rule of the majority of citizens. Now, when you say that the majority of the country, by winning the popular vote, wants a certain candidate, I don't think you should think of the United States in terms of 300-something million people. You should think of it in terms of a vast degree or a vast array of heterogeneous communities, okay? So instead of thinking in terms of what do the majority of the 300 million people want, what do the majority of all these congressional constituencies want? Because, again, there are communities and constituencies that are never going to change, okay? New York, California, Texas, Alabama, they're always going to vote the same way. So if the population in those states, in those areas grows, yeah, that might help win the popular vote. But you have to think of it as appealing to the majority of communities in America, okay? I mean, if that makes sense.
No, it's a very fair point. The only thing I'm arguing is that, it's unfair to think of people in pockets because it's so diverse. Like, someone in Austin, Texas is more likely to vote like someone in California, and someone who's 80 years old in San Diego is more likely to vote in line with someone from Texas. So it kind of just gives people an incentive not to vote and participate in democracy because they think, oh, I live in this place that's always going to stay the same. What's the point in even participating when I'm different? Like these metropolitan cities in these red states, for example, Kansas City or Atlanta, they are very, liberal pockets in very conservative states. So what is their incentive to vote or even participate in democracy if they are just stuck based on the people around them? I think that people's interests are so spread out across the country that the Electoral College is just so outdated.
I think because interests are so spread out in pockets throughout the country, we should continue with the Electoral College system. I think that's the biggest reason to have an Electoral College system. Because like I said, all of these different pockets, all of these different communities are going to want different things, regardless of the size of their population, just in terms of people. Okay, so the community in rural Oklahoma and a community in New York may want drastically different things and may need something to be done about both their communities. But because one is larger in New York, I don't think they should be able to decide just on account of size who gets to rule over the other.
Interesting. Okay, I want to just pivot to another question. So fundamentally, do you think it makes sense that the Electoral College has a system where electoral votes don't match up evenly to populations? And what I mean by that is, for example, one electoral vote in Wyoming represents 1/5 of the people than one electoral vote in New York. So does that mean that not everyone's vote is equal?
Yeah, so I understand why people in larger states might find that frustrating, and I understand why a lot of people might think that's inequitable. But I think that is just a way of leveling the playing field. I think that because you are giving, like I said, I'm thinking of the United States in terms of communities and pockets. In that way, you are giving each pocket an equal voice, regardless of how many people happen to live in that pocket.
Interesting. Okay, so Bill, give me your 30-second final thoughts on the Electoral College.
So I understand the shortcomings that many people see with the Electoral College. I still believe that it is the most equitable way to decide a national election. It makes sure smaller states and constituencies are not left behind, and it will prevent any sort of mob rule that could occur, which is what our founders intended. And finally, it forces politicians running for a national election to appeal to a wide range of constituencies.
Interesting. Well, my final thoughts are, I just want to start off by saying, every time we bring democracy to another country, we never seem to give them the Electoral College, which is a funny thing. We give them all of the other aspects of our democracy, but for some reason we never pass on the Electoral College. I think America's president, the highest office, should be decided by somewhat of a direct democracy. I understand the troubles with it. I understand representing everyone's interests and how, there are some people in more rural or small states who feel like their interests aren't being represented. However, I think that our government and the people who are running for office should be reflecting a changing country. I think the Electoral College is an outdated system with very racist roots in slave interests back in the days. And I think that this idea of the two blue coats running everything isn't true, because I think just fundamentally and ideologically, we should be representing every person as one vote. And the Electoral College fails to do so. It thinks of people in terms of states, when really, in a changing country, we should be thought of as individuals with individual thoughts, ideas, and passions. So I think the Electoral College needs to reflect that. I think whether we do that through abolishing the Electoral College, amending the Electoral College, or instituting some type of way, such as the National Popular Vote Compact, and I encourage you to go online and look up what that is.
You're with it?
Yeah, I am very with the National Popular Vote Compact bill. I encourage everyone to look up what that is. It is a state legislation that is going through several state chambers right now that would use the Electoral College to basically manipulate it into being a national popular vote. But going back to what I was saying, I think that the Electoral College does not represent everyone. It barely represents the majority of the nation, as we've seen in several elections, including last election. But I guess me and Bill are going to have to agree to disagree, like we do so on so many issues. But thank you very much for listening, everyone. Have a great day. Say bye, Bill.
Bye, everyone. Good luck on your project.
And thank you very much. Bye, everyone.